Hi, it's Dr. Bernstein. Welcome to the fourth part of our series on Charles Brockden Brown's Wieland. And in this video, I'm going to be taking us a little bit deeper into questions about the significance of the narrator in this novel, and then setting up some important issues about cause and effect in this narrative and situating them within an 18th century philosophical context. So, in order to start getting into this issue of cause and effect, I wanted to say a few things about the narrator and think about what is the significance of choosing this type of narrator, right? And I think in general, when you're reading something that's a work of literature, that's something that's worth considering is like, why choose this particular form of narration? Um, and now there's an obvious answer. One answer is really obvious, and that is that this was a popular form of narration in the 18th century. So, for instance, in one of the videos, I talked about British novelists like Samuel Richardson, the author of Pamela or Virtue Rewarded. That was also told from a first person point of view. So that's the obvious answer. But let's consider why is a first person narrator significant in relationship to this specific novel and the specific events and characters in this novel. Why not use an omniscient or a limited omniscient narrator? Why choose a female voice to narrate this story? Given the events in the story, what seems significant to you about having a male author impersonate or mimic the voice of a female? Why not have someone like Playout narrate the story? So, I think that asking yourself these kinds of questions, that is, questions that go beyond just what happened, like what is and what's happening in the narrative, to sort of getting back a little bit behind the story, where you're really entering the realm of analysis and interpretation, is really important. So it's not just the things that have happened, but maybe like why they're this way, or why not another way? Like, what would have been different if he chose play out, or what would have been different if he used a limited omniscient narrator? Those are really good kinds of questions to ask yourself, especially if you're trying to take your, interpretive skills to the next level. And you just have to keep in mind that you are entering the realm of speculation and interpretation and analysis. So there's not always a definitive, like, right answer, but you have to be able to have an interpretation and support it with legitimate evidence from the text. So I encourage you to do that. But one of the reasons why I mentioned the narrator in this particular video is because, unlike Wieland, who is very certain about the cause of his father's death, Clara isn't. So if you're in my class, we looked at on page 40 how Clara, as the narrator, is telling us that Wieland, her brother, always regarded her father's death as flowing from a direct and supernatural decree. So Wieland is very, very certain about the cause of this event, what it flows from. Okay? And then on the previous page, this is on page 39, you should take it out now and mark it up. But on page 39, Clara is giving us her own perspective on their father's death. And it's the scene after Wieland has heard a voice, which he has assumed to be the voice of his wife, Catherine. And they're sort of trying to figure out what's going on. So this is on page 39. And Clara says, "I could not fail to perceive a shadowy resemblance between it and my father's death. On the latter event," meaning her father's death, "on the latter event I had frequently reflected. My reflections never conducted me to certainty, but the doubts that existed were not of a tormenting kind. I could not deny that the event was miraculous, and yet I was invincibly averse to that method of solution." My wonder was excited by the inscrutableness, the mysteriousness of the cause. But my wonder was unmixed with sorrow or fear. It begat in me a thrilling and not unpleasing solemnity. Okay, so that's Clara's perspective. So she's not certain, right? She perceives shadowy resemblances and reflects on the situations often, but has never been conducted to certainty. So she's unlike Wieland, who's very certain of the cause. She's sort of like in between. She's trying to figure it out. Then we get someone like Playout, right? So hold on to Clara because we're going to come back to her. But I just want you to take a look on page 28. This is a description of Playout. So Playout is being described here by Clara. My brother and he, meaning Playout, were endowed with the same attachment to the Latin writers, and Playout was not behind his friend in his knowledge of the history and metaphysics of religion. Their creeds, however, were in many respects opposite. Where one discovered only confirmations of his faith, the other could find nothing but reasons for doubt. Moral necessity and Calvinistic inspiration were the props on which my brother thought proper to repose. Pleyel was the champion of intellectual liberty and rejected all guidance but that of his reason. So, in many ways, Pleyel is being positioned as the skeptic here, right? As the one who doubts, the one who only relies on reason. So he's really on the other side of the spectrum. So on one side, we've got Wieland, the believer, the one who's certain. And then we've got Pleyel, the skeptic, the one who's, doesn't believe or who only believes in his reason. And so the two opposite ends, and then Clara is in between those two. And that's what I find significant about her as a narrator. Because she's neither a complete believer nor a complete skeptic. Whether that's in terms of religious issues or in terms of like trying to make sense of what is happening in this novel. She's in between. And if you're in my class, you'll recall that we talked about the passage on page 25 about how their little world was variegated but not tarnished or disordered by it. It hindered the element in which we moved from stagnating. Some agitation, this is Clara's voice, some agitation and concussion is requisite to the due exercise of human understanding. And this passage reminded me so much of something that Charles Sanders Peirce said. Peirce is a really fascinating 19th century American philosopher and mathematician. He was sort of really, really talented in many different things, but he's really known as one of the founders of pragmatism, which is considered really America's first formal contribution to philosophy. And in one of his essays called How to Make Our Ideas Clear, he says that the action of thought is excited by the irritation of doubt and ceases when belief is attained. So this thing about doubt like irritates us. It irritates us into thinking. And, in many ways, once we've established a habit or once we've established a belief, we just don't necessarily have to think so much about it because we've arrived at our conclusion and we can just sort of take it for granted, at least for a certain period of time. So what we've been getting in this narrative, and what I've been talking about in the videos and in class, is that Clara is the one who's really trying to figure things out. The action of her thought has been irritated and excited by her doubt, and she's trying to resolve this lack of clarity. So as I said in the third video, in relationship to what Jay Fliegelman talks about, if Brown is writing this novel to get us to study and to reflect, then it makes a lot of sense that, his narrator isn't someone who's exactly sure, who's telling us this, an omniscient narrator who's saying, well, Clara believed that, Playout believed this, Wieland believed that, but the fact of the matter is, bleh, right? That's not going to make us think. I mean, it should make us think because we're critical readers, and so we should think about the omniscient narrator, but in general, it doesn't. Or we get Playout, who's totally skeptical, so we're just seeing things from one perspective, or we're getting the narrative through Wieland, although you'll realize later that would be hard, that or impossible, and that would be, marked in a very different way about being very certain about things. So she's sort of in this in-between state, which puts us in this in-between state and excites us and irritates us into thinking about, what's really going on here, and what's happening, and should we trust what we're seeing and reading, and whose voice are we listening to, really? These are all things that I think are part of the significance of choosing Clara as the narrator rather than some of the other characters. But I want to get us to this issue of cause and effect, because that passage that I read to you about Clara from page 39, Clara says that her wonder about her father's death was excited by the inscrutableness, the mysteriousness of the cause. And if you go through this narrative, you might not get it the first time you read the narrative because there's so many things to be taking on and there's so many like little subplots going on within the narrative. You will see that it's riddled with references to cause and effect. And in the next video, which is really, really short, I'm going to show you some great techniques for hunting down those references and making it easier for yourself. But right now, I just want to situate the issue of cause and effect in relation to 18th century philosophy, specifically the ideas of David Hume, a Scottish philosopher. Now, I'm going to be reading to you a quote, but it's been in my notes for so long that I can't find the reference right now. And I know there are lots of versions of this quote floating around on the web, but I will try to find the reference and I'll put it in the comments when I do. So basically, Hume attacked the idea of causality. This idea of causality, and this is all a quote, states that for all effects, the idea of causality, for all effects, there is a cause. Hume said that even though the cause came before the effect, there is no proof that the cause is responsible for the effect's occurrence, and that cause and effect in the natural world derives solely from the conjunction of two impressions. Next thing I'm going to read just sort of explains this a little bit more. Hume argued that when one event causes another, most people think that we are aware of a connection between the two that makes the second event follow from the first. Hume challenged this belief, noting that whereas we do perceive the two events, we don't perceive any necessary connection between the two. Hume denied that we could have any idea of causation other than the following. When we see that two events always occur together, we tend to form an expectation that when the first occurs, the second is soon to follow. This constant conjunction and the expectation thereof is all that we can know, according to Hume, of causation, and that's all that our idea of causation can amount to, so that we never truly know exactly the connection between the exact cause and effect, essentially. So now your task is, because this text is riddled with these questions of cause and effect and their relationship, is to go back through the narrative and look at these issues of cause and effect in relation to the specific events and characters in the novel. And when you get to the end of the novel, because I think you've really got to get through the experience first, think about the message that Brown's narrative seems to be sending about our ability to perceive causes and effects. Is it the same as Hume? Is it different? What's the message that you seem to be getting from the story? So that's it for now. Make sure you watch the next video, which is really short. I'm just going to show you some great techniques for finding those references. And of course, if you like this video, I would like it if you liked it. And if you're not already a subscriber, I would really love to have you subscribe. I try to keep updating the site and updating my videos and giving you some good information on American literature and writing. And that's it for now. Take care. Bye.